biggest financial impact from a report that I can remember. He probably wouldn't have went much higher anyway, because we had proven in the past that 430, 450 corn probably wouldn't be many buyers. You would have curbed livestock even more, and cattle and hogs, you'd have put some more hog guys out of business so that you couldn't eat it. And then the exporter guy was going to say, at $4.50, I believe I'll eat feed week, and we got a ton of that in the worldwide. So we probably would have closed lower that day anyway. So then where does that leave us? Looking at a daily chart, you look back at it, and it gets complicated, but that gap, that big drown draft that we had, limit lower, the speculator couldn't get out. It's against the law for a large spec to trade limit up or limit down. He has to wait till it trades. And the large spec was caught long, quite a bit of grain, and he had to get out of it. So now we gapped lower that next day, and where we're back at now is back above that 350, where this thing all started. And I guess if you look back here in June, we weren't going to get a crop in the ground. Suddenly we found that we did, and then we were talking, we could get a record yield. And we started pricing a record yield all the way down to $3.15. Beginning of September, we thought we were going to get a frost. And then now you start to speculate, well, how much are you going to lose? And I farm in North Dakota, so I said, boy, that crop up there is late. These guys did it again. They thought planting corn in late June is going to work. It doesn't work in Illinois in late May, let alone in June in North Dakota. Well, we kept doing it, and suddenly we started calculating how much is immature, how much is, what if a frost comes the 1st of September, and you could calculate, you could lose 1 billion bushels of corn, or 1.5 billion, and so the market kept pricing things high enough, and it ironically got up to that 426 level. We spent 2 or 3 months trying to figure out just how much was lost. The government came out on January 12th and said, those guys that we asked in June thought that the price, or that they asked us in November what we thought we were going to get for a yield. And usually in the last 7, 8 years, November, I'm done combining already. I hadn't even started. So the guys in Illinois and on north and elsewhere hadn't combined enough to know. So you're thinking, well, I'm hoping for 180, might make, but I don't know what it's going to be because it's late, I might not get it all in. So you hedge your bets a little. In December, they asked that same guy, so now that you're 95% done, what did you do? Well, what I got out of the ground ain't bad, but I got some left in the field. So what do you think that's going to do? And they told the government, it's the government's survey that you saw. So that meant that Illinois, Nebraska, the southern states that got done, they knew they had a big crop. And even when I was in North Dakota at the coffee shop, they complained like I did. Well, the high cost of drying and so forth. But when it got all done, so how'd you do? Well, when I got done looking at the wet bushels and dry bushels, it wasn't too bad. And we had a pretty good crop in the area where we're at. So that's what you saw in January, that the crop got bigger. And now we have to discover what that crop is left out there. How much did we get? They're going to tell us in maybe March 10th, but 12th, whenever they come out again. But they're not going to look at North Dakota because they know it's not going to be out of the field. I will contend that the crop will get bigger in March in corn and soybeans both, because that crop, I think, is bigger than we thought. It's hard to believe when you're just standing out there in the snow, but just about everybody we talked to had a better than average crop. And remember, an average crop, average yield, trendline yield is some good and some bad. We had more better than we had poor, regardless. And again, North Dakota raises 1.8 million acres, insignificant to us in Illinois. And I mentioned one time to a friend of mine, I said, I spill more out of the front of that corn head than you guys produce. And he said, you need to adjust your corn head better, And so it's not, so where we're at recently was back at a point where we started when we broke out of that 350 area. And now we know we have a record crop. We got more acres coming. I don't know what it is fundamentally for us not to go back to the level at $3.15 and below, where we knew we were headed, and trying to determine if we're going to have enough demand to eat that record crop that now we know we have. And we may just be pausing in here. So our focus has been, if we get any kind of a 10 or 15 cent rally off any low in here, we've got to start catching up on some sales if you haven't sold any. And it carries through into the future as well. The planted acres thing, I think, is pretty important, and the crop report wasn't just about finding 300 million more corn, and we thought we were going to find 200 million less. It was about the wheat acres not getting planted. And so you've got 6 million acres of non-winter wheat out there you got to go someplace with. And this is not land that you're just going to leave idle just because you want to. It's not cheap ground necessarily. And What's interesting is winter wheat in Texas was down 1 million acres, Oklahoma 500,000, Ohio was down, Nebraska down 200, Montana down 550, probably going to Durham maybe, I don't know, barley. Missouri down 360, Kansas down 700. They like corn in Kansas. Illinois 500,000, we're not going to plant wheat, this spring wheat obviously. So you've got acres that, what are you going to do with it? This is one idea by someone, a Lynn group, who put it out and said, may not happen, but here's what you got to be thinking. You know, soybeans could go up 2 million, 2.5 million acres. We don't need 2.5 any more acres of beans. Corn could go to 92.5, that's versus 86.5. I've got like 89 million. I can't conceive that we'll plant 6 million more acres. But you look at where it's at, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, they like corn. Ohio certainly likes it. Illinois will probably plant corn again. We just can't get the bean yields as we can corn. And our costs have come down. So if we get 92 million acres of corn and get an average yield, like get last year's yield, we got a problem. We could have over 2.5 million bushels of corn. I have it in the supply and demand sheet, and if you get this, you'll see all that. But even at only 88, only up 2.5 million acres, we could end up with 1.8 billion bushels. So that's keeping everything going up a little bit. Feed usage goes up because of poor quality of feed. We haven't talked about that yet, but we've got some terrible corn out there that you can't find a home for. That will come to haunt us at the last half of this marketing year when there's alternatives out there. Argentina's got corn, Brazil's got corn to sell, plenty of feed wheat. We recently sold premium milling wheat out of this last few days out of New Orleans, sent it to Brazil, they sent back feed wheat. So the guys that are feeding wheat in the South are the chicken people. They don't, our biggest problems seem to be Ohio and Indiana, where we've got amatoxin, amatoxin. We're finding our hog guys saying that the hogs won't eat it. The guys down south doesn't want to take a chance. Some of the ethanol guys said we don't want it BDGs. The cash buyer in northern Illinois says he doesn't think there's number 3 corn north of Interstate 88. And we're seeing this 2-tiered deal. Chicago Corn Products is 4 under. We're still 44 under in northern Illinois, and I asked my buyer, I said, it doesn't take 44 cents to go from Rockford 80 miles to 100 miles into corn products. He said, you got corn that'll meet their grade. He said, more power to you. We don't, and we have 8 million bushels in storage. Maybe if we core it out, we may find some. So you take a truckload in there, they probe it, it goes to the river, or you find some guy in a feedlot that's going to use it. And now when that guy knows you've got a semi-load of corn floating around, you can about imagine what you're going to get for it. So we have that coming against us down the roadways. This is a chart that you'll receive if you want this. It shows what kind of carryover we might have under certain yield conditions in planted acres. And you can't see it from up there, but at 89.6 million acres, if we get last year's yield, we're going to have 2.3 billion bushels of corn. If you get 92 million, 91.5 in last year's yield, you're up to 2.7 billion.